The Apache neighbor asked the rancher, "Does this dress suit me?" He replied, "I can't look away." The ranch sat where the land slowly changed its voice. On one side, open fields stretched wide, marked by wooden fences, dry grass, and cattle moving lazily under the sun. On the other side, the land carried deeper stories: red earth, scattered stones, and paths worn not by machines but by time and memory. The line between the two places was thin, almost invisible, yet everyone knew it was there. The rancher had lived on that land for more than 20 years. His name was Thomas, though most people simply called him Tom. He was not a loud man. He did not talk more than needed, and he never wasted words. After his wife passed away many years earlier, silence became part of his life. He worked, he ate, he slept, and he repeated the same routine day after day. The land kept him company. The animals depended on him, and that gave his days meaning. Every morning, Tom woke before the sun. He brewed his coffee, stood on the porch, and watched the sky change colors. The mornings were his favorite. They reminded him that life still moved forward, even when his own heart felt stuck in the past. He checked the fences, counted the cattle, and repaired whatever the night had damaged. He liked things simple and steady. Complications had already taken enough from him. Across the land lived a woman named Elena. She had grown up on the Apache reservation nearby, but had left years ago to build a life elsewhere. The city promised opportunity, but it also brought loneliness and disappointment. After losing someone close to her and feeling worn down by a life that never felt like home, she returned to the land she knew. Coming back was not easy. People remembered who she was, but they also remembered who she used to be. Elena moved into her family's old house, a small place filled with memories. Some were warm, others painful. She spent her first weeks cleaning, fixing broken windows, and reconnecting with relatives. The land welcomed her quietly. It did not ask questions. It did not judge. It simply waited as it always had. The first time Tom noticed her, it was early morning. He saw movement near the edge of his property where the fence met the open land. She was walking slowly, studying the ground, her hands brushing against the tall grass. He stopped what he was doing and watched for a moment, not out of suspicion but curiosity. He had not seen her before. She felt his eyes and looked up. Their gaze met from a distance. There was no smile, no wave, just a shared pause. Then she nodded once politely and continued walking. Tom nodded back without thinking. It was a small moment, but it stayed with him longer than he expected. Days passed, and their paths crossed again and again. Sometimes it was at the fence line. Sometimes it was near the dirt road that connected the ranch to the reservation. Their exchanges were simple: a greeting, a question about the weather, a short comment about the heat or the coming rain. Neither of them pushed for more. Tom noticed things he had not meant to notice: how she walked with calm purpose, how she spoke softly but clearly, how she listened before responding. She noticed things too: how he always made space when talking to her, never stepping too close. How his eyes carried sadness but also kindness. How he never treated her like a stranger, yet never assumed familiarity. One afternoon, one of Tom's calves got injured near the fence. He struggled to calm the animal, unsure how to handle the wound properly. Elena happened to be passing by and stopped when she saw him. Without hesitation, she offered help. She explained what to do in a calm, steady voice. Her hands moved with confidence, shaped by knowledge passed down through her family. Tom watched her work, surprised. He followed her instructions, and together they managed to help the calf. When it was done, Tom thanked her. His voice was rough, unused to saying much. She smiled slightly and said it was nothing, but to him it was something. After that day, their interactions became more frequent, still simple, still respectful, but warmer. She would stop by to check on the animals when passing through. He would ask if she needed anything when storms rolled in. Sometimes they stood quietly, watching the land, saying nothing at all. Those moments felt comfortable, not awkward. Tom learned small pieces of her story without asking directly. He learned she had lived far away, that she had returned to care for family. That life had not turned out the way she once hoped. Elena learned about his wife, about how the ranch had become both a comfort and a burden after she passed. Neither of them spoke of pain in detail. They didn't need to. The fence between their lands remained, but it no longer felt like a wall. It felt more like a line drawn lightly, easy to step over if needed. Still, both respected it. They understood history. They understood that some distances existed for reasons deeper than geography. Neighbors noticed. People always did. Some watched with curiosity, some with quiet concern, others with old assumptions they never bothered to question. But Tom and Elena did not pay much attention. What they shared was not loud or dramatic. It was built in silence and small acts. As weeks passed, Tom found himself looking toward the edge of his land more often. He noticed when she did not pass by for a day or two. Elena noticed the same. Neither admitted it to themselves. Both were cautious. Life had taught them that moving too fast often led to regret. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned deep orange, they stood near the fence again. They talked about the land, about how it changed with the seasons. There was a long pause between sentences, the kind that could feel uncomfortable if shared with the wrong person. With each other, it felt natural. Neither of them knew it yet, but something had already begun. Not a love story, not a promise, just a quiet connection rooted in respect. Two people shaped by loss, standing on land that remembered everything. And in that quiet space between words and fences, the first chapter of their shared story slowly took form. The days slowly settled into a pattern that neither of them planned, yet both accepted. Tom continued his early mornings and long hours under the open sky. Elena continued rebuilding her life, helping her family, and reconnecting with traditions she once thought she had lost. Somewhere between those routines, their presence in each other's lives became natural. Tom noticed that he no longer felt the same weight when he woke up. The mornings were still quiet, but the silence felt softer. Sometimes, while fixing a fence or checking the cattle, he would find himself wondering if Elena would pass by that day. The thought surprised him. He had lived alone for so long that he believed he no longer expected anything from people. Yet here he was, waiting without realizing it. Elena felt changes too. Returning home had been harder than she admitted. Some people welcomed her warmly, others kept their distance, unsure of how to place her after so many years away. She carried her own doubts. Had she failed by leaving? Had she failed by coming back? On days when those questions felt heavy, she found comfort walking near the open land, where the air felt freer and her thoughts felt lighter. They began talking more, though never all at once. Their conversations grew in pieces, spread across many days. One day it was about weather patterns and how the land signaled rain long before clouds appeared. Another day it was about food, about what grew best in dry soil, about meals remembered from childhood. Sometimes they laughed quietly at small misunderstandings. Other times they stood side by side, letting the wind fill the space between words. One afternoon, a sudden storm rolled in faster than expected. The sky darkened and strong winds pushed across the fields. Elena was caught far from home, and Tom saw her struggling against the wind. Without thinking, he waved her toward the ranch house. She hesitated only a moment before following. Inside, the house was simple, clean, but clearly shaped by a man who lived alone. Old photographs rested on shelves, including one of Tom and his wife from many years ago. Elena noticed it but said nothing. She understood the quiet respect of not asking questions that might hurt. They sat at the small kitchen table, listening to the rain hit the roof. Tom poured her coffee, unsure if it was the right thing to do, but she accepted it with a thankful nod. The storm passed quickly, but something about that moment stayed longer. Being indoors together felt different, more personal. When she left, they both felt the shift, even though neither spoke about it. After that day, trust deepened. Elena helped Tom during a difficult week when one of his older animals fell ill. She stayed longer than planned, offering support and calm presence. Tom listened as she spoke about traditional ways her family respected animals, not just as work, but as living beings. He realized how much knowledge she carried and how little she tried to prove herself. Tom, in turn, shared stories of the land before fences were rebuilt, before droughts changed the soil. He spoke of mistakes he had made, of years when he worked too hard and listened too little. Elena listened carefully, never interrupting. She saw a man who did not hide behind pride, only behind habit. People began to notice their closeness more clearly. Some neighbors made polite comments. Others asked quiet questions. A few offered warnings shaped by old thinking and fear of what they did not understand. On the reservation side, elders watched carefully. They saw how Elena carried herself, how she did not forget who she was, even while standing beside someone from a different world. Elena felt pulled in two directions. She valued her growing connection with Tom, but she also felt responsibility toward her community. She worried about disappointing people she loved. At night she lay awake, listening to the sounds of home, wondering whether she was strong enough to balance both parts of her life. Tom sensed her hesitation. He did not push. He had learned long ago that pressure only breaks things that need time. Instead, he stayed steady. He showed up when help was needed. He stepped back when space was required. That quiet patience spoke louder than promises. One evening, they walked along the fence line together as the sun dipped low. The land glowed softly, painted in gold and shadow. Elena spoke about her time away, about how she once believed leaving would solve everything. Tom spoke about staying, about how sometimes staying could be just as painful as leaving. They stopped near the place where their lands met. The fence stood between them, worn but standing. Elena rested her hand lightly on the wood. Tom did the same on his side. For a moment they looked at each other without speaking. There was understanding there, and uncertainty too. Neither of them knew what the future held. They only knew that something real was growing, something that could not be ignored. It was not loud or rushed. It was careful, shaped by respect, by listening, by shared silence. As they walked back, each to their own side, both carried the same thought. Life had a way of changing direction without warning. And sometimes, the most meaningful changes began not with big decisions, but with small steps taken side by side. The day began like many others, quiet and warm, with the sun rising slowly over the land. Tom followed his usual routine, but something felt different. There was a sense of expectation in the air, though he could not explain why. He worked steadily, fixing a loose gate and checking the water troughs, yet his thoughts kept drifting toward the edge of the land where Elena often passed. Elena, meanwhile, stood inside her small home, looking at herself in the mirror. She rarely paused like this. Life had taught her to move forward without hesitation, but today was different. There was a community gathering planned for the evening, one she had promised to attend. It mattered to her family, and she wanted to go with confidence, not doubt. She held up a simple dress, clean and modest, nothing fancy. It was not new, but it was special to her. She had worn it once before during a time when she still believed everything would work out. Slipping it on, she studied herself carefully. The woman looking back carried strength but also uncertainty. She wondered if she looked out of place or if she still belonged in moments like this. Before leaving, she hesitated. A thought crossed her mind, unexpected but strong. Tom. She did not fully understand why his opinion mattered to her, but it did. He had seen her as she was, working, tired, quiet. He had never seen her dressed with care, never seen this side of her. The thought made her nervous, yet curious. Tom was stacking tools near the porch when he noticed her walking toward the ranch house. He straightened without realizing it. Something about her movement caught his attention immediately. She walked more slowly than usual, as if unsure whether to continue. When she stepped closer, he finally looked up fully and stopped. The dress was simple, but on her it felt different, not because of beauty alone, but because of confidence mixed with vulnerability. Tom felt a tightening in his chest, a feeling he had not known in years. For a moment he forgot to speak. Elena stood on the porch, suddenly unsure of herself. She almost turned back, but then she met his eyes. There was no judgment there, only honesty. She took a small breath and asked the question softly, half smiling to hide her nervousness. She asked if the dress suited her. Tom did not answer right away. He knew the importance of words. He also knew that this moment mattered more than he could explain. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm but filled with truth. He told her he could not look away. The words surprised both of them. The space between them felt charged, not with excitement but with recognition. Something had shifted. Elena felt warmth rise to her face, not from pride but from being truly seen. Tom felt the weight of what he had admitted, even if it was said simply. For a brief moment, neither of them spoke. The land around them remained still, as if waiting. Then Elena let out a quiet breath and laughed softly, breaking the tension. She thanked him and explained she was heading to a gathering. Tom nodded, wishing her well, though part of him wanted to say more. As she walked away, Tom remained standing on the porch longer than necessary. He replayed the moment in his mind, wondering if he had crossed a line. He respected her deeply and feared making her uncomfortable. Yet he also knew he had spoken from a place of honesty, not impulse. Elena walked with mixed feelings. His words stayed with her, echoing softly. They did not feel like flattery. They felt sincere. That mattered more than anything. At the gathering, she smiled more easily, stood taller, and felt more grounded. Still, her thoughts returned to the porch, to the quiet man who had looked at her as if she mattered. Later that evening, Tom sat alone, the house unusually quiet. He thought about his wife, about how long it had been since he allowed himself to feel anything close to hope. He wondered if opening his heart again was wise, or if it would only bring pain. But he also realized that closing himself off had not protected him from loneliness. In the days that followed, things felt different between them, not awkward but more aware. Their conversations carried new meaning. Simple words felt heavier. Silences felt deeper. Elena noticed how Tom watched her more carefully now, always respectful, never crossing boundaries. Tom noticed how she met his gaze more often, no longer looking away quickly. Yet with this change came questions. Elena worried about what others would say if they noticed the shift. She had lived long enough knowing how quickly people judged what they did not understand. Tom worried about whether he had the right to feel this way, whether his presence complicated her life more than it helped. One afternoon, as they walked along the familiar path near the fence, Elena spoke openly. She told him the question she had asked that day had not been planned. She admitted she felt unsure of herself more often than she let on. Tom listened carefully, grateful for her honesty. He told her that his response had surprised him too. He admitted he had not allowed himself to feel much since his loss. He did not promise anything. He did not ask for anything. He simply shared the truth. That honesty built something solid between them. They agreed, without saying it directly, to move slowly. To let things grow naturally without pressure or expectations. Respect remained their foundation. The land, the routines, the quiet moments, all of it continued, but now with a deeper connection beneath the surface. The question about the dress became more than a moment. It became a turning point, a reminder that even after loss, even after doubt, life could still offer unexpected warmth, not through grand declarations, but through simple words spoken at the right time. As the weeks moved forward, both Tom and Elena understood one thing clearly. Whatever lay ahead would not be easy, but it would be real. And sometimes reality, honest and imperfect, was more meaningful than any dream they once believed in. Life did not slow down after that moment. In fact, it seemed to move faster, as if the land itself had noticed the change between Tom and Elena and decided to test them. Days passed, then weeks, and the quiet connection they shared grew stronger, but so did the attention around them. Tom began to notice looks from his neighbors. Nothing was said directly at first. It was in the pauses during conversations, the way voices lowered when he approached, the questions that sounded harmless but carried hidden meaning. People asked if he needed help more often than before, or if everything was all right on the ranch. He knew what they were really asking. He answered politely and kept his focus on his work. Elena felt similar pressure from her side. Some relatives were warm and supportive, happy to see her smile again. Others watched closely, their eyes filled with concern rather than anger. Elders asked careful questions about her time away, about her plans, about where she spent her days. No one accused her of anything, but the weight of expectation was clear. She carried that weight quietly. She did not want to disappoint anyone. Her return home had already been difficult, and she feared becoming a topic of quiet discussion. Yet she could not deny how grounded she felt when she was around Tom. The calm she found near him was real, and it helped her face the parts of her life that still hurt. Tom noticed her growing quiet on certain days. He did not push her to explain. Instead, he made space. When she wanted to talk, he listened. When she needed silence, he respected it. That patience was not easy for him. Part of him wanted to protect her from every whisper and judgment, but he knew he could not fight battles that were not his to fight. One evening, Elena arrived at the fence later than usual. The sky was already dim, the air cooler. She stood there for a long moment before speaking. Tom sensed something was wrong and waited without interrupting. She told him about the conversation she had been having. About how people worried she was drifting away from her roots. About how some believed she was choosing a path that would only bring difficulty. Her voice did not shake, but the effort it took to stay steady was clear. Tom listened carefully. When she finished, he spoke slowly. He told her he never wanted to be the reason she felt torn or pressured. He said that her place, her identity, her choices mattered more than his feelings. He told her he respected her too much to stand in the way of her responsibilities. His words brought relief and pain at the same time. Elena was grateful for his understanding, yet saddened by the distance his caution created. She realized then that caring for someone did not always mean moving closer. Sometimes it meant stepping back. In the days that followed, they both tried to return to their earlier rhythm. They still talked. They still helped each other. But something felt restrained, as if both were afraid to take the wrong step. The warmth was still there, but it was guarded now. Challenges came from the land itself as well. A dry spell caused trouble for the ranch, and Tom spent long hours managing limited resources. Elena helped when she could, sharing knowledge passed down through generations about conserving water and reading signs in the soil. Their teamwork reminded them of why they trusted each other in the first place. One afternoon, a neighbor made an unkind remark in Tom's presence, questioning his choices and suggesting trouble would follow. Tom did not argue. He simply said that respect was not something to fear. The conversation ended awkwardly, but Tom felt a quiet strength in standing his ground without anger. Elena faced her own moments soon after. During a family gathering, someone spoke sharply about people forgetting where they came from. The words were not directed at her by name, but everyone knew their meaning. Elena stood quietly, then spoke with calm honesty. She said honoring tradition did not mean closing one's heart. She said respect could exist without losing identity. Her words were simple, but they carried weight. That night, she walked toward the fence, needing the open air. Tom was already there, as if he had felt her coming. They stood side by side, not touching but close enough to feel each other's presence. She told him what had happened. He listened, then shared his own experience from earlier. They both realized they were facing similar struggles from different sides. That realization brought them closer again, not through romance but through shared understanding. They spoke openly that night about fear, about how past losses shaped their caution, about how choosing connection meant accepting uncertainty. No promises were made. No decisions forced. They simply acknowledged the truth of what they felt and the reality of what they faced. From that point on, they agreed on one thing: honesty. If something felt wrong, they would say it. If space was needed, they would respect it. If feelings grew, they would not pretend otherwise. That agreement became their anchor. Slowly, the tension around them began to soften. Not everyone approved, but fewer questioned openly. People saw that nothing reckless was happening. What Tom and Elena shared was steady, respectful, and thoughtful. Over time, that steadiness spoke louder than rumors. Elena found her balance again. She spent time with her community, participated fully, and continued honoring her traditions. She also allowed herself moments of quiet connection with Tom, without guilt. Tom continued his work, his routines unchanged, but his heart felt less heavy. They both learned that strength did not come from choosing one world over another. It came from standing firmly in who they were, without apology or fear. The land remained the same, stretching wide and patient. It had seen conflict, loss, and healing long before either of them arrived. In its quiet way, it reminded them that growth often came through endurance. By the end of that season, both Tom and Elena understood something important. Love, in its truest form, was not about escape or defiance. It was about responsibility, respect, and courage. And though the path ahead was still uncertain, they were no longer walking it alone. The season slowly turned, and with it came a quiet sense of clarity for both Tom and Elena. The heat softened, the evenings grew cooler, and the land seemed to breathe more easily. Change no longer felt like a threat. It felt natural, like something that had been waiting for the right time. Tom noticed that his days felt fuller, not because he was working less, but because his heart felt lighter. He still rose before the sun, still walked the land, still carried the memories of his past. But those memories no longer weighed him down the way they once had. He had learned that honoring what he lost did not mean refusing what life still offered. Elena also felt stronger. She had found her balance again. She was present with her family, involved in her community, and confident in her place among them. The fear of judgment had not completely disappeared, but it no longer controlled her choices. She understood now that living with respect did not require shrinking herself or hiding parts of her life. Their connection continued in the same careful way it always had. They spent time together without rushing. Sometimes they worked side by side, fixing fences or checking water lines. Other times they simply walked and talked, or stood quietly, watching the sky change colors at sunset. There was comfort in knowing neither expected more than the other could give. One evening, Elena invited Tom to a small community event. It was not a big gathering, just a shared meal and conversation. Tom hesitated at first. He did not want to intrude or make anyone uncomfortable. Elena assured him that his presence was welcome, and that meant more to him than she realized. When Tom arrived, he was respectful and quiet, just as he always was. He listened more than he spoke. He greeted elders with courtesy and followed Elena's lead. Some people watched him carefully, others with curiosity, but no one turned him away. Over time, the tension eased. People saw not a symbol of division, but a man willing to show respect. Later that night, as they walked back under the open sky, Elena thanked him for coming. Tom admitted he had been nervous, but also grateful. That simple experience marked an important step. It showed both of them that bridges could be built slowly, without force. Tom, in turn, invited Elena to a ranch gathering a few weeks later. Neighbors came by to help prepare for winter. Elena joined without hesitation. She worked alongside others, spoke kindly, and kept her dignity. Some neighbors who had once whispered now spoke openly with her. Not everyone changed their mind, but enough did to make a difference. Through these shared moments, their connection became something others could see clearly. It was not hidden, but it was not displayed either. It was honest and steady. That steadiness earned quiet acceptance. One afternoon, while repairing a fence together, Tom paused and looked across the land. He spoke about the future for the first time, not with fear, but with calm hope. He talked about plans for the ranch, about small improvements, about wanting the land to remain healthy and cared for. Elena listened and then shared her own hopes. She spoke about teaching younger generations what she had learned, about keeping traditions alive while allowing room for growth. Their dreams were different, yet they fit together without conflict. They both understood that life would still bring challenges. Differences did not disappear just because people cared for each other, but they had learned how to face those differences without letting them divide them. One evening, as they stood near the familiar fence line, Elena reflected on the moment that had changed everything, the simple question she had asked, and the honest answer she had received. She smiled quietly at how something so small had opened the door to something so meaningful. Tom, sensing her thoughts, spoke softly. He said that sometimes the most important moments were the ones that felt ordinary at the time. He said he was grateful he had chosen honesty over fear that day. They did not need to define what they were to each other with labels or promises. What mattered was the respect they shared, the trust they had built, and the courage they showed by choosing connection instead of distance. As time passed, their lives remained rooted in reality. There were no sudden changes, no dramatic endings. Just steady days, shared work, quiet laughter, and mutual support. That was enough. The land continued to stretch wide under the sky, holding their footsteps, their conversations, their silence. It had seen many stories before theirs, and it would see many more. But for Tom and Elena, this story was theirs alone. They had learned that real connection did not come from ignoring differences, but from facing them with honesty and care. And in doing so, they found something rare and valuable, not a perfect ending, but a meaningful beginning built on respect, understanding, and quiet strength.